The poet Sugata Guha says, "Poems for me are shortcuts to the soul. Prose takes a tad longer." Poetry, then, is just a path to oneself, a way to be lost and found. This is Sunil Bhandari, and you are listening to Uncut Poetry. When breath becomes air. He always talked of death as the other side. He was okay so far, though age quietly pulled him away, just as the mysteries of youth are soon signposts of vagaries. He grew older slowly, but got old just like that. I held him close to my heart that fateful day, as the nurse changed the sheets, and he held on to me as if I was adrift and he was saving me. He had no weight, and soon he had no will. He was a prisoner of the loose walls of his skin for too long, and as he forgot things, the wildness of his mind kept returning to the same meadows. He used to smile to himself. How age constricts our world, but ensures we return only to the glorious. His last breath intermingled with mine as he'd taken my face close to his, for his last words, his last kiss, as if he wished his last possibility to fill my being. It was his way, I guess, of staying on. I muse often of his being and his departure, missing the softness of his glance. He'd looked at me with happiness, as if my presence itself was good news. It's strange about life and something I mull on. He was a prisoner and free in his happiness. And here I am, free and my own worst prisoner. So much about life is to know about death. In its very concept lies life's only immutable truth. As our days drift into countable numbers, we can either lean into the reality and wait, or fight the Dylanian battle of not going gentle into the dark night. But ever so often, there is no option. We become fortune's arbitrary choice. We can only hope for painless exits. But regardless of what happens to us, death leaves behind a form of spiritual debris. The ones who loved both our silence and our chaos. What is it to be still alive when someone you love no longer is? What are the stories which now remain silenced? What are the changes we would have wrought in each other's lives? Because relationships are forever budding, always a passage to something new, always gravitating to the other with new cells, if not new eyes. So much of what we lose when someone dies has to do with things we were not always aware we cared for. The loss is greater for that late realization. So it comes back to our present with the ones we love. The only thing we can give or receive is companionship, presence. On Sundays, as I sit at my desk finishing my editing or writing my newsletter, I see my dad silently stand at the door and look at me. When I catch his glance, he smiles happily and walks back to his room. As our needs leave the bastion of greed, our simplest desires are enough for a comfortable easement into serenity. The ticking bomb of our mind finally finds a resting place. There's something to be said about easing into death with equanimity. Everything falls by the wayside, only space and light remain. And in that peace, even the people we leave behind find their reconciliations. The drift stops. The breath which ceases finds a new breath to breathe. Life finds fresh renewals. Death finds a new life. This is Sunil Bhandari and you were listening to Uncut Poetry. Did you know I have started a newsletter called The Uncuts? It's published weekly and is full of grace and mull. Subscribe it with the link in the show notes. And did you enjoy this episode? Why not subscribe to Uncut Poetry on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Gaana, JioSaavn, Google Podcasts, or anywhere you listen to your podcasts. And if you enjoyed this episode, share it with someone you love. See you next week.